This is Sophie. She recently turned 18 and today is her first time voting. By voting, she gets to fully take advantage of the opportunities she has as an American. While Sophie's at the polls, we're going to find out how people truly feel about voting in our country.
Why do I think the voting is important?
Yeah.
Why is voting important? Because we must elect our leaders and because it's our say in government.
Yeah.
I've seen too many elections where the popular vote goes one way, but the electoral college goes another way. I think if everybody's voices get heard and everybody votes, it'll be a better country for it.
Voting is important because you get to choose who's in office and who makes the decisions.
Well, I think because people get to make more money.
The process of voting hasn't always been the same as it is today.
We vote by secret ballot today. Is a relatively new invention. It's only been about 120, 130 years where it was common for us to be able to vote in the secret ballot. So why is that important? Well, when you didn't vote by secret ballot, everyone knew who you were voting for. The parties printed their own ballots. So when you went to vote, you had to ask for or bring your own Democratic ticket or Republican ticket, and they were often different colors, for example, and so everyone could see how you were voting. So the system is in many ways a lot less corrupt than it used to be by having things like the secret ballot. Another really interesting development that affects political engagement with elections is how easy it is for people to be engaged in terms of contacting other people, mobilizing people to vote, small donor fundraising. It's a whole new world out there for those kinds of things where it's easy to get donations from people out of state.
Additionally, the people who vote today weren't always able to do so.
When the country started, we basically just sort of white men who own land were able to vote in most places. And some states, for example, gave women the vote long before the federal government did. Some states recognized the voting rights of African Americans before the federal government did. But it's been a slow process. I mean, really, African Americans haven't really had the right to vote until the middle of the 20th century, when those rights were sort of basically guaranteed to them through the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act of the 1960s. So, and then, you know, we've expanded the right to vote so that 18-year-olds could vote as well. And so the franchise has been expanded in lots of different ways over time, but the electorate has expanded a great deal since the beginning of the country.
As Sophie votes for the first time, we're exploring how voting has changed since it originated in America.
There have been a lot of changes in who can vote, and in terms of the way we vote changing, that has a lot to do with various technological changes where you don't actually have to show up. So a lot of people who are already inclined to vote are the ones who are voting early, but things like same-day registration, no excuse absentee voting, no excuse vote by mail, those kinds of things the research suggests do boost voter turnout. Again, those come at a cost too. They take away kind of the pageantry and the sense of common purpose that comes on election day. To get $5, $10 donations, you don't have to be invited to a fancy fundraising dinner at $500 a plate anymore to be engaged in the build-up to elections.
Although many advancements have been made, unfortunately some things have stayed the same.
So they'll suppress the vote instead. Change the rules. Close polling places in Black and Latino communities. Remove legitimate voters from voting rolls. Pass laws like the one in North Carolina that targeted African Americans with, and I quote, surgical precision.
Voter suppression basically applies to lots of different mechanisms that are used to sort of make voting more difficult for people. We think about things like voter ID laws. We think about things like restricting early voting so that it doesn't happen on certain days. Voter ID laws make it more difficult for people who might not have a government ID to vote. Groups that are affected by those laws often counter-mobilize in order to sort of, that basically when a state comes out and makes it more difficult for a group to vote, that group often then mobilizes itself. It's almost sort of like they see that as a slap in the face and they are like, now I really want, if you're going to try to make it hard for me to vote, now I really want to vote.
For many people in our country, voting is no simple task, but of those who do have the privilege of voting with ease, some choose not to vote.
What do you think about people who choose not to vote?
It's their right not to vote. They can do what they want, similar to the people that kneel down during the NFL games.
Passing up that opportunity to vote is a big mistake.
But today, Sophie chose to exercise her right, and for her, voting was easy.
The process of voting was extremely easy. I pre-registered on National Voter Registration Day. I just gave them my address, and then they found my name, gave me a ballot, and I filled it out.
We've explored a variety of opinions Americans have regarding voting, and though opinions differ, we can all agree that voting is an essential part of the American experience.
Don't just complain. Don't get anxious and freaked out. Don't throw up your hands in despair. Don't boo. Don't hashtag. Vote.